Okay, so we're going to start with a bolster spine-wise. And I want you to select your awareness of your back so that there's a natural arch that is continuing to kind of surface, thinking about my ribs and my spine. This is an incredibly fascinating space to explore as you age because it's like an area you don't necessarily have, unless you have an illness that you're not going to necessarily have arthritic issue, right, in ribs. And then how you work that will help the spine. So let's go into and kind of delve into the lowering onto the bolster aspect. So you're going to, as you recline back, I want you to get your sand in your core basin and release your head back on the block that's behind your bolster, okay? So situate the weight of your head. Anything that you have to fuss with is reasonably important here so that you can actually get your brain stem supported on that block. So I've chosen a second setting. You could go with the flat one, but keep in mind that's going to pull the chin and maybe grip your neck. So I want you to find where your neck is safe as you know it. And then lengthen the feet down so you keep the legs in extension. And then with that reach, you'll put a sandbag either across the thighs or maybe across your ribs. Where does it feel that it's satisfying to ground and root your experience for the class? And then as our spine has this natural arch, you might decide that you want to bend your knees and let your knees rest together. You might be finding ways to push the feet out so the spine can kind of acclimate to this sensation of lift in the ribs. And then stretch the arms way open. So open out through the arm piece. And as the arm pieces spread the chest musculature outwards, then we start to pace the breath to layer into our lung force. So feel the necessary elements of finding yourself pretty grounded and even with your extremities. They all lead back to a spine. All extremities, even, if you think of your brain as an extremity, clearly that is invested in the spine. So as we lift up our inhale, fill the lungs. And with your exhalation, empty and letting go. And arriving in your practice can take a good 5 to 10 minutes. So any of your surroundings that may shift during the practice, see if you can collect your attention into your breath, filling up through the ribs and relaxing out of the mouth. Scan the sensation in your mid to lower back, and if that feels like it can actually relax, then you're fine with the legs in a reaching position. But if they do feel like that position is causing a little bit of tension, or you wouldn't know until you change the legs, right? So if I bend the knees, and it kind of relieves that pressure in my back that I'm feeling, I can bring the knees towards each other. So I want you to find in the next just few moments of deciding which of those layers of reach, whether the feet are apart or the feet are on the floor and the knees are together. Both are perfect. So feeling that extending pattern of the rib cage and the ascending inhale, does it feel that it moves through your ribs? Let it be real simple, laying back across the bolster or lengthwise on the bolster and giving some release through your ribs. Okay, so we're going to shift the shape. We're going to keep on rib reactivity though. So I want you to bring your hands to slide your sand away. If the legs are straight, you're going to go ahead and bend the knees so the feet walk towards your seat. And then reach your arms back straight behind you. See if you can develop that motion where the arm, kind of the armpit chest, creates a little warmth, right? And the arch of the spine is enhanced, but it's kind of nice to have your knees bent to do this pattern, right? Because the spine can be a little bit tense. So we'll use the ribs, the lung work, to start to warm up the spine today. Okay, so reaching to your block under your head, you're going to want to be very careful on this transition. So I bring my elbows towards the sides of my head. We've done this before where we hold the block behind our head and squeeze the elbows in. I like to call it the helmet. So you're going to work with the elbows squeezing in. The knees are fully reaching forward, and then start to lightly arch your spine and hold the block, lift your head, and then slide down. Now, if you have that second block under your pelvis, you're going to slide that out as well. But you're going to slide down so your seat is off of the bolster, just the sacrum. And then take that block behind your head, bring it to the space between the knees, and reach your arms besides the legs, and then develop that next layer of connection in your ribs, which is the core, and work on moving yourself towards sitting and lifting up the spine, floating the spine up, and then lower back and stretch your arms straight back behind the shoulders, reaching the arms as straight as they can lengthen. Squeeze the block and then come back up so you're rising up, flowing and floating the spine, and then lower back down last time. As you find the arms with that reach, see if you can move them straight out to the sides to a T shape, and then straight back, good, reaching the arms behind your shoulders. Come back up, squeezing into that block, of course, and then remove the block between the knees, place it just beside your leg, and then get a hold of that other block right besides, actually kind of next to my hips is a good placement. And then I'm going to turn to get my other blanket. So I want you to place your second blanket on top of your bolster. And I guess that belt is going to be essential now for reclining cobbler's pose. So set the blocks in under the bent, open knees, or actually thighs, and then get your belt and place it so that as I move my belt overhead, around torso, hips, that whole zone, it kind of lies in its loop. But what I want you to work with is reaching the loop across the tops of your feet where it connects to your ankles. And what's kind of nice about sometimes these sessions is that we can be really articulate of our spacing of our props. But something I want you to notice is if the inside of the knee is feeling one side more tension than the other, please be sure that your belt is not too tight, because that's going to pull around the knee if it's really rigid, and have the buckle so it's easy for you to loosen or unbuckle if you have an emergency. And then make sure those blocks are high enough so that when you lower back, you're certainly going to have your blanket under your head for this one. And I'm going to put my blanket so it's simply supporting like kind of like a pillow versus at my neck. Some of you might decide you want your blanket lower so it feels like it's completely just above the shoulders. So make that a personal placement. But then this whole rib releasing work is going to be first without the sand. So send your arms open and back so that you're holding onto your elbows. And let's go with whatever is your natural reach to your elbow. If it's right hand to left elbow, the first reach, at least you're getting both of your elbows. Okay, so feel where the arms move in that unity at the elbow clasp. And that definition of now the way the bolster is supporting with something higher underneath your, well, it's a different support than the last one. Similar positioning, different heightening in the ribs. Okay, now cross the right arm at the upper chest, so it's like right across the collarbones. And for some of us, that might be a lot of rotator cuffage. Okay, so when I cross the right arm, I'm going to reach with my left hand to the right elbow. And then I'm actually trying to pull that shoulder to stretch the right upper side of my back. So if you kind of feel like you roll your ribs to the left, like you're getting off of the, kind of moving off the bolster, that's incorrect. You want to feel that the left side of your spine is well centered on the bolster. The right shoulder blade lifts up, but the left side of the spine is centered. You might lower your shoulder down a little bit so it doesn't feel as tensing to the circulation. Okay, and then I want you to let the right hand lower down to the floor, so let go of that elbow. Let your right arm, hand and all, be besides you, and then feel the shoulders push back to the bolster. Shift the side, so left arm comes up, crosses to the right, right hand to left elbow, and grasp onto the elbow with your left hand, good, and then feel when you kind of pull that arm. Now, are you pulling like just the arm piece itself? Are you able to feel that it can stretch into your left upper side of your back? So I want you to really get that circulation into that left upper side of your back. But maintain that quality of touchdown on the bolster. Pace your breath, 4 count in breath, and a 5 count out breath. Feel the belly comfortably move with each breath. Like you have a kind of a breath basin in the belly. Now relax your touching to that left arm, and as you take the arms back again, holding onto the elbows, I imagine you will find the opposite crossing as kind of a organic habit to get complete with the sequence, but you might have one side you favor. So try to go to the unfavorable crossing at this moment. And if the legs feel pretty comfortable, you don't need to stress them out anymore and get a deeper stretch through the inner hip. You might start with simplicity here. This is still opening, working through the pelvic floor, but not causing pressure in the knees. And the SI joint, right? The more the knees push down, the tighter that will crank into that SI area. So we're going kind of generic, overall good circulation work. Good, now let the arms release and feel not so much a kind of moving as wide as you can go, but feel the arms off of the floor, but in this halo around your upper bones, right? The upper part, upper sphere of your body, not so much your bones, but your brain. And as your arms move out gradually, okay, you're going to lower down, and we're going to shift this pose now. So I want you to, so much for the sand idea. We're not going to use it on this one today. Okay, we're going to move unbuckle the belt. We're going to slide the belt off, but I want you to get that belt for this one today to use for the outer hips. You're going to bring the knees up towards each other, step the feet a little bit apart, naturally, however your ankle would be in your hips. And then kind of slide that belt. You might have to lift up a tad to get the belt out from underneath you so the buckle's not stuck under your sacrum. Sacrum buckle. Okay. Now, we're going to take that ball, if you have it, and place it at the upper outer left hip. If you have a spare block around there, you can keep it to that left side. It might be fairly helpful, but make sure it's low. so you're not getting away with something too easy, okay? And then we're going to lift up the right leg. So when I lift up through my leg, and I kind of notice the foot forward of the knee, when I cross the right foot to the left knee, I want to be sure that this right knee is not getting pushed away at this moment. Like I'm not trying to force the muscle to push the knee out like I did in the last pose, right? My knee was open on the block. So I'm trying to get us into positions that are going to regenerate the circulation in the hip, but not cause trauma to knees. So things will probably seem a little bit more kind of coddled every once in a while in class, just to be safe. So I've got the ball next to the left hip, and then as I lean my body weight into the ball, if you don't have a ball, you can use something like a towel rolled up. You can also try the block, although it's pretty firm. You can actually put your sandbag next to your left hip, and that works too. So my knees are going, everything kind of going over to the left side. And I'm just going to let my left hand hold the right knee, but I'm guiding my left hand to move that right leg towards the left. I still have my sacrum zone feeling like it's supported by the bolster. I still feel my right outer hip. And then I want you to gradually motion. So when your right leg is crossing over towards the left, and you sense your spine centering, breathing, and give a few more moments. Holding on to that right knee. And now we're going to keep a gradual hold of this right leg circulation. So I want you to release the hold of that leg with the left hand, and now get your belt, and you'll lift it up and reach it around the right foot. So it could be anywhere on the foot, right? It could be in the middle of the foot, but you probably don't want it just around the toe, right? You want to get the foot itself. And then when you hold onto the belt with your left hand now, your left hand's been busy, you're going to lift up that right leg, and you're going to lean over to the left again, but now your right leg is basically straight. You're trying to lengthen it. Hand is holding the belt, which is underneath your right foot. And I give myself a lot of slack with the belt. So I'm not trying to get my left hand to hold my foot. And I would never want to try that in this pose. That's not my goal. Like at any time, even if I was trying to advance, that's not the goal. So my opportunity here is the ball is still under that left leg. Again, you might use another prop, but feel the spine supported by the bolster. This is a huge part of it. And the chest is open, centered, open up from the bolster. Now, if your right arm can stay relaxed besides you, or you can stretch it up besides your head. And that might be a little too dynamic for some, but it is an interesting opportunity, especially if you feel like it is dynamic, right? And it's kind of juicing the joints, right? It's not just juicing the hip and the ankle, but also the shoulder. These very still shapes that enhance the blood flow around the joints. Okay, now bend through that right knee a little bit, lower the right arm down if it's up. And then as you bring that right leg back up center, why not hold the belt with both hands? Keep it under that right foot. My left knee is open, so I'm going to just keep it that way because it's kind of a nice root for my spine. And then pull firm around the ball of the foot, get a feel of your footing and the belt just kind of being pushed a little bit by your foot. You're pulling, so you're striking that sensation in your calf. And if it's quite burrowed in, you can feel the thickness of the calf to stretch it. Maintain that pull and then gently bring the shoulders back so they're connecting to your bolster. Now this should be an enhancing position for your your leg roots all the way to your Achilles tendon. Achilles asana. Sounds kind of funny. Okay, now we're going to move away from this belt under your foot. So find how you would do this in a pretty complementary way for your spine. So bend that right knee, feel it move open, slide the belt off your foot. And then we'll take a simple switch over. So left foot crosses over to the right knee. I take the ball over to the right, upper outer thigh or up to the hip. And then I kind of push the ball in like I'm almost going to sit on it, but it's just kind of snug into my towards my skin. And then lean your right leg over to that side. Okay, so you have the crossing of the left ankle to the right knee, and you're holding onto that left knee, and you're guiding it. Now, it's pretty interesting to notice that one side you probably pull it a little different than the other with the hand. You have maybe one side you guard your knee more, okay? So those habits will just become intrinsic to how you practice. So do the best that you can to be balanced in your efforts, and noticing if this is the easier side or the more challenging. Can you keep it simple? The left arm could be relaxed beside you. It could be stretching back. I liked it to be relaxed on this one because I know I'm going to use the belt and have my arm move then. So when I cross that left leg over to the right, start to kind of get busy circulation in the left hip. And give it a few moments here. Breathing. And sensing the circulation through the rear, right? The waistband doesn't get a whole lot of stretch yet. We're not quite there. We're building up from our roots. And we'll get into the thoracic in the next little set. Okay, now as you bring your knee back in and open, you're going to get that belt and then reach it under that left foot. You can do that when the leg is crossed to the knee. It doesn't need to be something fancy and different. And you might notice that the simplicity is really important. So let's say when you stretch the left leg up, if you feel it around the knee joint, give yourself a little more slack. I want you to feel that the leg is working all the way to the lateral, that lateral rotator band up at the side. And then lean your body over to the right. So the left leg is being crossed, but it's not crossing over the right knee, like at all, right? The knee is right besides it. There's a little space between the two, but it's nothing you need a block for. Well, that would be kind of an interesting test if you did put a block between the knee, right at the inner right knee. It's pretty good. So, and the idea is it's making this, quite therapeutic as far as the circulation in the joint. So it's not any kind of wild and crazy posture, right? It's very, very productive for the circulation. So the left arm stretches besides your head. You don't have to add this block idea. It just looks really supportive for me. So I'm going to try that. You can go without the block. Now, as you reach back with that left limb, is it the left side of the spine that is arching more than the right? You have two sides to your spine, so they usually have differences. So encourage this spatial motion with the armpit chest reaching. A few more breaths. Yeah, let the weight into that ball or the object besides the right thigh be very steady. And feel the left heel push into the belt. Now left arm comes down and you're going to get the belt with the left hand as well. If you have a block between, you're going to take that away and then grasp the belt with both hands and feel that right knee open, and noticing this has been a very specific start to the work in the hip zone. So notice when you pull back, can your elbows kind of just relax down from the where they've parked, right? You're not trying to pull your shoulders to your ears. The elbows are kind of like heavy. And you do have a pretty good grip on the belt. Okay, now it's going to be nice to get rid of this gripping shape. So I want you to bring that right knee back into the center line and then bend to the left knee. And then as you take that belt off your foot and put the belt aside, kind of refresh your focal point here. Move the ball aside and then feet about, oh, maybe not quite as wide as your mat, but right on the edges, the inner edge, still on your mat. And then move your knees side to side in a kind of gentle wave. So it's not as if you're trying to get a goal of putting them to the floor whatsoever. It's keeping that wave of circulation balancing from the lower stomach into the hips. Okay, you're sliding off the bolster likely. You're kind of starting to move down away from it. And then feel if you can link into a new kind of link in. You're going to link into moving your knees over towards the left, but we're going to slide into a side sage pose. Okay, so you're going to roll left. Okay, all of this is, trying to find a nice harmonious way to transition. So I'm going to protect my knees by kind of drawing that right knee closer to my left leg, and then slide the bolster so you can pivot it to horizontal across your mat. Okay, and then with the blanket heap, be curious about getting your blanket so the one on the bottom is no longer rolled up, it's flat. It might work nice to have it a little bit bulkier than this, like you might want it higher. So you can take the top one and fold it in half again if you like. But have your sandbag nearby and have a block overhead. Okay, so sandbag, block to the back, and maybe a ball on the inside of that right leg. Doesn't have to be the knee itself, but inside the leg is a nice place to put the ball or a block. Okay, now I'm going to try to work with getting my leg to reach back. But of course, the farther this right leg moves back, then the band around the thigh starts to get a little bit more tone, which is what you want, is the tone. But of course, we want to be careful of the knee. So I would, if you have a ball, use it because it's a nice, the resistance is bouncy. It kind of conforms with the skin a little bit. And that's why I like the ball. So as you lean into your bolster, get a nice hunk of bolster underneath you. Hunk of bolster. Okay. So my rib cage isn't perfectly fanned down, but once I lie on the bolster, right, your head lowers to the blanket, you find the height that works just for you. Maybe you need a little more blanket under your head so that you find satisfaction for the neck. So this right side can release. Take all the time you need, even if your whole pose is fidgeting. Okay. Get that bolster in firm. And then add maybe some sand. Maybe you have sand and you're going to add that to your side body. It could be on the actual rib cage, but it also could be down near the hip. Okay. So right now it feels like my hip will be a better use for my sandbag because my rib cage, it felt a little bit tight in my back when I had that pressure on my side. But we're all different with that. So as you reach your right arm over to the block behind you, you can offer the block support. You can actually bring your hand, for some of you, to the floor, works better. And for some of us, we're going to probably move our right arm a little bit open. Okay, so any movement will do. Everyone has a lot of free range to work with this arm piece, whether it goes into movement for a little while, and then you find a stillness. We're back in a shape where we can relax the eyes, which is a little more relaxing for the brain when you can quiet the eyes and the muscles around them, maybe closing them. And then feel the waist And can you use that energy you often use with eyes, right? There's only so much you're going to have to devote to being patient with yourself in the moment. And then noticing any areas you might need to reset. Maybe your knee doesn't like this shape. Maybe you need them together. That's fine. And some will prefer the knees side by side, more of a fetal position. So you can also change it up. See if that's easier, more comfortable. Go with comfort and a little bit of extras of stretch if that works. And then ribs moving with breath. That is the final and connection now in this position is the ribs, the costal breathing. Yeah, really be sure your left arm is safe underneath you so it's relaxing. And that right hand can either be overhead, it can be kind of curled around, touching the floor, or maybe even on your right hip. Okay. So a few more moments, we're going to keep this rib steady, kind of venturing, connecting. Okay. Now, the left side of the neck is probably the most peaceful part of the neck tissues. So when we roll onto our back for this chest opener, right? It's a horizontal chest opener. So we do horizontal breath. And so what I want you to shift is your sand. And then how can you move that right arm back down where it was maybe before you started the reach? And then shifting your right leg maybe closer to your left. If you've got that ball kind of in the way, you might have to roll it down. And then you're going to try to bring your knees so that they help you turn onto your back. Now, I find if I try this, my legs can move, but my spine doesn't move as quickly as my legs can swing. So what you'll probably need to do is lean into your left side, down to your left arm, and then come up and then sit in front of the bolster and take the spine. So I know some of you are real thoracic adventurers, right? You can get the thoracic part of the body, the mid spine has a lot more mobility than others. So if I lower down to mountain brook poses, this is another name for this one too. This is, I can do this some days. Some days it's a little bit weary, but right now it's warmed up enough I can go there. But if it's too much, you're going to add a block under your sacrum. Actually, not under your sacrum, it's under the back of your pelvis, under your rear. And then it's, oh, that's so much easier. Okay. But if you can muster this one up and your spine can do this, most of us, and as we're aging, right, the spine is not going in this position, the upper back is going rounding. So any of this developing work in our lungs, our respiratory tree, bronchial tubes is going to be helpful, right, for this, the circulation and eventually clearly immune system, but lymphatics. So work with the position, just simple here for about 15 more seconds. But brain is resting on the blanket. My arch of my spine is very dedicated, but the work I can do to reinforce feeling more comfortable with this is to squeeze the shoulder blades back to the bolster. So working with my rib circulation without trying to pull my belly in, that's not the proper way to work the ribs, but to expand with the inhale. Like you're filling it up, a chamber. It's the rib chamber. And as you exhale, it's not that exciting, but you'll feel it kind of go to a calm place, kind of a centering platform. I know, and then the diaphragm has to shift back and move on your next inhale, and it just keeps going all the time. Lots of dedication. Okay. Now when we switch to the second side, sage, You're going to feel your body kind of roll to the right. If you have a block under your pelvis, move it away. But can you transfer into the side sage with kind of the smoothness that you might see with a creature that can really move sly, real sly move. You're gonna roll to that right side. Take the time. You don't have to stare down your screen. Take the time and go with your body shift. Roll to that right side and use your left hand maybe to prompt you up for a second. Maybe if you're going to use that ball to the inner left leg, set that up. Get the sand to that outer left hip and use that pattern of bolster in, ribs over, side, and lower down your head to the blanket and reach the left arm up. The right leg really tucks up to the bolster. There is space between my right side of my waist, kind of where my liver is. That area is not pushing into my bolster. So go with that reach with the left arm. Try it. If it's too much, you can use the arm to open out the chest, but it's likely going to be good to try both sides with an even opportunity. Okay, so evening out and let the spine feel its arch. It can maybe complain during some of these deep stretches, but likely will feel good maybe after a little bit more than it is during. So feel if you can breathe during the experience. If that's a challenge, then it's too much, stretch. So a few more breaths here. Good. Now the ribs expand and they center back. When that left arm is in that reaching mode, can you feel the armpit chest open? Can you maybe turn that left arm out so it's not touching down? If it's a little bit on a healing cycle, then maybe this doesn't work for every one of us. But if your arm can get that reaching, consider the arm movement out of the ribs and the waist versus it being like arm reach, right? Think about the consideration of your whole bone structure supporting this movement of the arm piece. Okay, so a few more moments here. Circulation. Left leg doesn't have to stay back. If it's uncomfortable, tuck it into the right leg. Okay, now with that left arm reaching, we're going to shift a real entire shift here. And ideally, this is going to be kind of a full body part. Not that we're not doing full body poses, but working with strength, flexibility, balance together. Okay. So when you roll your body weight to that right hip, think of it as the hip bearing the weight. Okay, so I'm going to move my sand aside. Try to be kind of mellow about it with my neck. And then move the left knee to the right. If you've got that ball stuck, just shift it away. And then when your knees tuck in, I want you to roll and then come up and take that bolster to the front of your mat. Reach back to your blanket set. And then take your blanket so that you have one in the middle of your mat. Okay, and the blanket could be a flat, kind of like a square. It could also be a quarter fold. I can't decide what I think is better for these, quarter fold or square. I'm trying to detect what's best on my knee. But you might find that the quarter fold is what we use a lot for the bulk. And if you have a sensitive knee, not necessarily a certain spot, but they're just kind of sore-ish, you might be towards the front of that blanket. If you're very comfortable in the middle of it, stay with that. But we have a bolster at the very front. Okay, so it's kind of out of your way. Well, actually, don't take it all the way out of the way. It's changing my mind. Okay, so You're going to be in a forward slant. So I want you to place your hands to your bolster. But when they reach, have an ability to let your back create a little bit of this roundness, and then reach your spine back, okay? And we're going to work with some progressing of balance in the muscles. So my wrists need to be very safe here. So what I want you to work with is the reach of the hands. If your wrists are feeling pressure, then what do you need to do? You need to probably slide your hands farther over on the bolster or pull the bolster closer to you so your wrists feel safe. But feel the armpit chest lengthen. Let your head nod a little side to side. Really full stretch in your back. Okay, good. Now keeping that awareness in your back, can you slide your hands onto the floor, next to your bolster, and then round your back into a cat pose. So chin towards chest. Okay. Arch the spine, tail back, chest forwards, and then round the back so you're hollowing through the belly, but it's more than belly, it's ribs, it's spine stretching. Okay, so continue this cat-cow pattern for about another 4 times, and I'm finding that your eyes can at least close so that you can navigate. There's quite a bit of opportunity to help your back out, but also to feel the connection in your core muscles, okay? Or your core muscles, okay? So the next time you find the arch, reach your hips back, lift up your knees. You gotta hook your toes under to do that. And then stretch out your legs. But that seems to be the difference here when your knees come up, is now the back body lengthens even more all the way through the heels. So with that reach of the ribs through downward dog, take the feet as wide as they can on a mat, right? You don't want to slip out. So you want to have your mat under your feet, but feel that stance of your feet with a wide stance, and then walk your hands to them. So the hands go back to the feet, and you'll reach your hands to the back of your lower leg bones and touch to the back. So this is obviously the back zone of the legs. When I push my hands towards them, I'm going to work on getting my sitting bones up towards the ceiling, but sensibly lifting. Sensible sitting bones. And so feel that lift of the seat, and be aware that when the head lowers down, your brain lowers down, it changes the circulation in the whole brain universe, right? It's an inversion. Okay, now hold your elbows with your hands so you get more inversion. If possible, you're going to lower your head and try to bring your head so it's between your arms. And even more so is if your arms are holding, right? It's like you're holding onto those elbows and you're trying to get your head inside the arms, right? But the hands are reaching to the elbows. So you're not kind of holding your head, but you're in an inversion. You're trying to get the head below the heart. Now calculate this move by making sure the feet are in that wide stance so that it's an easier journey for the legs to lift into the sitting bones. Mellow out the brain. Feel the arms being drawn down. Breathe. Exhale. Now, if your head moves with your breath, like it pulls forward, that would be a good sign that the spine has its natural mobility. Okay, but in general, we're trying to get the brain between the arms. This is our version of headstand today. Okay, now as you lower down the arms, bend the knees and start to scoot your feet a little bit closer together. Now, a little bit is probably an inch on each side, but you'll find that I don't know what your findings will be, but when the feet are farther out and you walk forward on your hands, it has some benefit of easeful patterns, right, of the distribution of weight. So it's like you want your back area to have a little width to it, okay, the feet. So when I walk the hands forward, feel the proximity of weight into your hands. You're not going to kick your feet into a handstand, but kind of feel, how does your weight go into your seat? And then, even though that's up, right, that brings the weight into your arms. And then lower down your knees on the blanket and find what the proper distancing of your knees, about hips distance. And then I want you to move the bolster. Well, actually, let's take an up dog without the bolster for one. We'll reach the hands as wide as your mat, and then lean your hips down and stretch out the front zone of your waist. Now that you've been hinging quite a bit, you're going to kind of peel that the front rim of the hip, and then the lift up into the rib body. Okay, now feel the arch through the spine, that pressure point. And now when you come back to table, good, give it a good try. Take the bolster now and use that. So the one thing about the measurement of the bolster for everybody, it's really different for your needs. So when you lower down onto that bolster, I find that I really need to get my front of my hip bones, but I don't like to get all of as much of my leg on the bolster. I like to have the bolster just really under the front of the hip bones. Okay, so I'm gonna play with that until it works for your balance. And then feel if you can lower down your upper core, so it's down the bolster. And then walk your hands in as close as they can by the bolster, so your thumbs are kind of hiding underneath. Fingers stretch open, shoulders back. Yeah, so play the baby back bend number right here. So you've got your knees comfortably apart, nothing too strenuous in the hip. And as you lift up now to that up dog, can you feel the front ribs motioning and the shoulders moving back, even if it's very subtle? Breathe that arch through the spine. Okay, now when you come back to the lowering position, the elbows by your sides. Okay, you're gonna get a feel of the front of the legs. Now they have everyone has probably a different way of the circulation in the hip front. So as you bring your hands out a little wider on your mat, toes under. Good. Okay, now come up to table, but let's take our knees closer together, not to the bolster, but just together. And take a step out with that right foot to the top corner of your mat. And then you're going to lean your left thigh. So I'm going to pull my bolster closer under my whole thigh. And once I get the bolster under the thigh, I'm also going to put my hands a little farther forward. Okay, so less pressure in my wrist. You can put your elbows on your bolster or on your blocks. But one thing I encourage you to do is to feel this left upper leg. See if you can work your glute muscles as if you're trying to almost squeeze that glute, inward. So you're trying to get some grip around the glute muscle, okay? So the length is in the quadricep. Okay, the back knee is down. Okay, now those of you that want to take a little bit of a turn, you're going to put your left elbow on the bolster and then put your right hand just above your right knee and take a twist. Okay, but I would be a little cautious how much you wrap around the spine, but this is a nice left side of the waist stretching, that left side of the spine, and then we can keep the spine long this way. So when we get to a reclining twist very soon, I want you just to kind of notice that this is a way you can get your spine to start length and then twist from the length. So especially working the circulation between the ribs and the discs. Okay, so now as I lower the hands down, okay, I'm going to do a simple shift over. So toes under left foot. Let's take a full shift. So lift up the back knee. So you've got maybe a little bit of support to do this. You're going to push back and move the right leg back to a downward dog, so the feet hips distance, heels reaching towards the floor and head towards the bolster. Okay, don't take that too much verbatim, right? Because if your brain doesn't reach the bolster, you don't have to force it down or do a somersault. It's just however it ends up. Okay, now heels lifting, stretching all the way through the foot, heels reaching back down. Take a few lifts, stretching through the sole of the foot, toes pressing down through the roots of the toes, heels reaching back down. Stretch your plantar fascia. Okay. All right, now lower down the knees. And then as you lower and put your knees closer together, take the left foot to the top corner of your mat and probably out of your mat's boundary. And then the right thigh lengthens. And then working the feel of my wrists, right? So I notice that if I have my hands higher up, like on two blocks, I use the elbows for this version. I would put my elbows down on the blocks versus my hands, and then the wrists are free of pressure. And some people find that the hands on the blocks is too much back arch, right? So you've got to find what works for you, or the elbows on the bolster. But the bolster under your thigh is significant. We could do this with the bolster horizontal. So you can do it both ways, right, for this quad opener. That's tempting to try last minute here, but we'll stay with the program. So right elbow on the bolster, and then turn to your left, bring the left hand to that left thigh, maybe above the knee, so it's not pushing on the knee itself. But notice if this feels pretty safe for your knee joint, if the area that's feeling the stretch is the leg, right, inner thigh, front of that right hip, right, the quadricep. Yeah, if you need to back off or change and vary the pose option, that's okay. Variate, I don't know if that's a word, variate. I don't think so. I don't think so. Boy's letting us know. No, check in with your English teacher here. I have my own dictionary some days. So feel where that right thigh is lengthening in the front. So we moved a little bit away from the ribs. We're going to move back into that circulation in your breathing muscles. So when you're twisting here, can you work with the musculature rotation? Okay. And then lower the left hand and the right hand. And then we're going to shift our hips back. Okay. Now with the left foot stepped out, you might feel a little bit of this kind of inner leg tundra kind of grips up. Like when my knee was moving out, my right hip could take some of the burden. Now it's all in the inner thigh. So we're going to turn our bolster across. So it's now horizontal. It's right across your mat. It's not lengthwise anymore, straightforward, it's across. Walk the left foot in across to the right side of your mat. So it looks like you're going to what might be pigeon pose. You kind of think, am I pigeon posing? Well, I don't think so. So what you're going to do is you're going to sit into that left hip. If you need to pigeon pose on both sides, then consider yourself fine to do that right now. If you get the pass to go with that. Otherwise, we're going to stretch the right leg forward, and we're going to bring both feet together in our traditional cobbler's pose. We've all been cobbler posers before. So I'm going to just simply situate my feet together. But I'm going to move my feet forward so that, kind of feel the knee circulation. So if my feet are closer, does that change if your feet are farther in front? Find what's comfortable for your knees completely as possible. And then keep the inner thighs moving outwards and outwards. Not outwards and forcing down, but just simply outwards. Okay, so my feet are together. I'm going to take a sandbag. How about you try it, see if you have one. Place it across your feet, so it's kind of at the ankle layer. And for me, that relieves my knees a bit when I put my sand on my feet. I find it really kind of interesting. what energy you put into holding yourself up in layers in different joints is particularly fascinating. So when I turn to my right, I'm going to twist off of my thoracic chamber. So kind of think above your lower chunk of your spine, your lower spine hump, which is your really fat vertebrae, right? The lumbars are really thick. So I'm going to turn to my right, bring my left hand above my right knee, and I'm going to reach my right hand around my waist. Okay? So try to keep it around your waist. Your right shoulder head might roll in. But I want you to feel that right hand around your waist. Turn. Okay, now if your right hand isn't reaching around, get your left hand to the right hand, hold the hand, and then try to reach it around a little bit more so you can stretch through your wrist. Really rare to get this to move like this. Right? Your wrist is usually this way most of the day. It's not really moving in these variations very often. Okay, now we're going to turn back forward, take a belt, place it in the hands that you own, okay, or whatever you might call that one, but your hands, and hold the belt behind you and open the chest. So I hold the belt and I'm reaching my shoulders back. Now, kind of feel that movement in your shoulder blade and also your shoulders that feel more connected to your arm piece. One is your back piece, one is your arm. And then keep that belt, kind of wrap it around so it's on your legs so you can easily get it next. Turn left, right hand just above the left knee. Reach your left hand around your waist. This one would have been good if we buckled up the legs for this. We could have held the belt. But, you know, learning every day, a new thing to learn. Hold that left hand and try to reach around your waist a little further and then feel the twist. I imagine you got one shoulder that doesn't have as much rolling in as the other. So kind of notice these things in your back muscles. Take a lift of the rib cage. Yeah, do the best that you can. Now, if you're trying to pry your arm across, some of us are going to take deeper twist positions, it looks like. Just go with what feels okay for you right now. Okay, so noticing, right, the turning, internalizing the twist. Okay, so inner space poses for the restorative pathways are twists and inversions. So when I come out of this shape, I'm going to get the belt one more time. Still have my feet in the same position. Hold the belt a little wider and then try to reach my arms back, but the palms are facing forwards, holding onto the belt. And with the shoulders moving back, see if they can kind of roll back and down. Lift up the heart piece. Like you got a little heart piece assembled that you're trying to put at the center of the ribs and up. Okay. Feel the arms get a little fatigued to do this work, right? A little tiredness in the upper back flesh of the arm is what we're looking towards. Okay, now as I let go of my belt, I'm going to take the belt aside and we're going to bring our sand now to our lap, knees towards each other. Get the blocks to the side yard, maybe a little bit higher to the side yard. I'm not sure exactly what we'll do with that, but when we lower on our back, we're on the bolster, okay? We have our blanket. I push my blanket a little farther back behind me, so it's going to be there for my brain. And when you slide your back on that bolster, notice I have to kind of slide on my bolster piece to feel supported with my whole pelvis. So every pelvic apparatus should feel like it's on the bolster. And then as you lift up your legs, give a test run of kicking them up and then kind of feel that circulation in your thighs, that movement. And then maybe you bring your knees into your chest and you reach the sand over your feet to the soles. And then you have enough separation with your feet on the sand that you can lift the sandbag up. And once you feel so victorious that you did that, you're going to work with your brain resting on just enough of a blanket, but having your brain a little bit lifted, just a little bit, is going to be helpful for the stretch of the neck. So even though sometimes we have requests to do neck stretching, what I'm trying to encourage is that we work with the kind of the alignment assignment for our neck in most poses. How can we consider the supportive angle of the spine resting and the neck just gently in traction here, right? So I have my blanket with just the right amount of height for me. Some of you might have your blanket lower than mine. I would recommend you have something under your head. And let the feet feel simply flexing through the ankle ridges. And the reality of the in-breath is to fill up, but feel the abdomen. This is called Viparita Karani, right? And Karani translates as lake, right? So the abdomen, you want to have that as kind of this pool of still, calm motion on occasion with the diaphragmatic lift of the lower abdomen. And then as you exhale, the organs get to rejuvenate, right? It's a restorative shape for the organs. So use the pose wisely. Even if this is your only homework pose that you do, this is a good one. Whether your legs are at the wall, over a chair, a couch, or up in the air. We do a little more work with the feet up in sand, or sand on feet, however you want to say it. So transfer the weight of your pelvis even more into that bolster. Just let it be. Inhale, belly full. And exhale, belly towards the spine. And then this final phase of practice is, even though we have a little dose of time left, consider the elements of movement internalized with your breath as like the idea of belly moving towards the spine versus belly moving towards the floor. So you stay kind of inner body internalizing. Sometimes eyes resting is the best choice for the mind focus as often as you can. You might get a little sleepy if you do that in these reclining poses. Now, with that awareness of your legs extra tall, right? If you stand on the feet, which you probably will do again today many times over, the weight of your posture is presenting over and over the habits. So right now it's kind of a fresh feeling through the legs when they're in this version. They're not usually at the top of you. So, feel that claim of length in the legs. So they are pretty straight, right? Even the muscles around the knee, you're trying to keep that container around the knee supported. Okay, now when we shift, I want you to bring the sand, if you have that, on the back of your leg, so you're in an upside down, right, forward bend position. They call it upward facing, but I get a little confused with that term. So when you have your feet drawing towards you, you've got to bend through the legs, clearly to get your body to shift to the next layer. So as I move my sand, and I just kind of let it drop to the back of my legs. Now, you could have this where your legs go kind of back in that same form of moving and lifting, so the back leg stretches. But you might move your sandbag, so it just feels like it's kind of setting into stretching your legs, but not making too much energy around the volume of pressure. Just let it be the natural weight of the sand. It's actually 10 pounds likely that you've now introduced into the stretch of the hamstrings. And then let the knees bend completely, so as complete as knees will bend. It's important to find ways of bending them in this type of direction where there's no pressure, right? Like when you're sitting cross-legged and so forth. So you're drawing the legs back in a E. So this is like child's pose for the spine, but there's no knee pressure. You're not pushing on them. So for many people, this is completely adaptable to their bone structure like this, to their knees. Okay, now with the spine so warm, you're going to move your sand aside and we'll take the bolster. Actually, don't take it away, but have your hands on the bolster. Let's bring the arms open, changing plan for just a few moments. Bring your knees so you're still on the bolster. Your knees are pointing upwards. And you're going to, for the second that is, move them to the right and let the thighs feel like they move in their own kind of sideways branch motion off of your spine. And then when the knees go back through the middle, they keep traveling to the left. So I don't know if you want to think of it as your knees traveling or your thighs united going from side to side. Use this as circulation for your waist. I want you to get your waist to feel a little bit of this rotation. Exceedingly safe, right? Because you're on the bolster. You can't really toss your legs that far over to the floor. And if you're very in tune, sometimes you might do these positions to get some release in your back, to let that happen. Give yourself enough time for that opportunity. Take another time across. Crossing time. And then bring your knees back into a center point and hands to the bolster. Squeeze the knees in towards the chest. Strengthen that circulation to your lungs. So 70% of them are in your back body. So when you bring your knees in, you're going to likely feel the spine stretch, but a little pressure in your lung capacity here. So push the bolster. Don't go too quick with it, but feel the push. And then can you kind of make it easy? You know how sometimes we go from one pose to the next and we strain to get, like we want to get there quickly or something, but just push the bolster, take all that time you can, let the spine line up on the firm ground. And then once you reach your fingertips with the bolster on them, you want to still be able to touch the bolster and then lower your feet on top. Okay. Now feel the arch of the spine. I mean, don't actually touch your spine, but energetically feel the arch of your back, right? The back of the pelvis. It's almost as if your the upper back, the glute medius presses down for most of us. It kind of jams. So what I want you to do is then put your hands so that they're on the front of the thighs, and then let your spine smooth out on the floor so it's completely touching down all the way through the base. Take your feet with a pretty healthy stance on the bolster, right? So they're not jammed together. They're a little wider than hips distance. And then as you push down into your feet, be a little cautious of your bolster. If it's a slippy, slidey one, you might need your bolster closer or farther away. And you're going to lift up your hips. Now my hands are going to now stretch on my thighs, so as if I'm trying to reach them to the middle of my thigh. And then slide your hands up to the top of the thigh piece, right, top of the quad. And that muscular band might kind of loosen, but the middle gets very toned. So I want you to work on lifting your hips. So the tone goes at the front of the hip bone. This is meaning the length. And then it goes around the sphere of the rear sphere. Okay. Now bring your arms overhead, in breath. And then exhale, lower the spine down. Ease the spine tracking, gradually release. And then come into alternating drawbridge. That just simply means lifting the hips, lifting the arms, stretching the back overhead. And then exhaling, lowering the spine down. Now focus on massaging through the spine, not so much an appearance-driven posturing. So pure circulation through your spine, okay? So the higher your feet are, the more you're going to get of that. That's why sometimes we'll do this rarely, but if we have a wall space, we can do lift and lower with your feet up on the wall. So you can climb higher on the spine like a shoulder stand. Okay, so this is a connection to shoulder stand pose. Now, next time you lift up, get a feel of your neck lengthening, right? So it's, you might kind of let your head feel it centering from the neck base. And then get a block under your pelvis. So you might use, what I'd like to, well, recently did a workshop on shoulder stand. We're not doing a full shoulder stand, but I recently, when we were working with this in our workshop pattern, we would take both blocks, and you'll likely want them flat, but then you just lie them underneath your back of your pelvis and let your pelvis sink into them. Now, if you can get your block up to the second height, go with that side by side. And then you want to have the block so it isn't felt like it's under your spine ridges, but it's really under the back of the glutes, right? So you'll feel that support. Now, keep it real simple here. So you're going to reach your arms down so the palms are open and get the shoulders to move back to the floor, chest open. So it definitely stretches your neck, right? You're going to feel a full neck stretch. That's the idea, circulation now into the glands of the throat, right? And that area does not have a lot of tone as you age, right? This area loses a lot of tone. So I want you to get that blood flow into that throat space, comfortably swallow. Don't do anything excessive with squeezing the chin down. And then we're going to flow left leg straight down and then the right leg. So the front of the hip bones opens. Okay, the feet are my feet are relaxing on the floor. Yours might be floating up. But what I want you to do in this final phase of this one is to give it a try to feel the legs reaching down. So as if you're reaching through your heels. So the leg bones have to really light up. Breathe, shoulders back and down. Open the chest. Okay, now this lift of the hips is nice before we do our final crossover twists. So before you shift over, I want you to bring your feet back up onto the bolster and then lift up your hips, push down to the feet, lift the hips so they crank back up, and then slide the blocks out, okay? Find that ball, probably maybe roll right to you. And then when you lower your spine down, ease spine to the ground. Kick the bolster to the right, kick the can, and then as you let the right leg straighten, you're going to cross the left leg to the bolster and put a ball or a block or a ball to the sacrum and add that sandbag to the outer left leg. Okay, so keeping with our pace here. So we put the sand outer left leg and we flow the backside of the pelvis through the hip and then stretch open that left limb. Okay. So feel the access to your lower back, your hip fibers. Let your head roll to the left. Yep, and your arms could be where they're comfortable. Maybe they go into a cactus, and the elbows bend, the hands back. I don't have that much mobility in my shoulder, but some of you might for the moment. But accepting, where your arms are comfortable is a big piece of the practice. Or whatever's comfortable. Feel where you can achieve relaxing your breath in the position and letting your eyes be at ease. Can you feel that left leg comfortably rest on the bolster? Whatever you need to find that, maybe a blanket under the leg. Maybe the sand is enough. The key here on both sides as we transition is that the weight is on the bottom hip, right? And your For this one, the left leg is crossing over, so it might have a continuous feature of energy for many moments in the pose. It may not ever calm the energetic drive to reach the leg. It may not get completely relaxed, but feel the circulation momentum in your hip. Okay. Now, when you change sides, I want you to, if you feel rushed to get to the second side too soon, you can take this one longer. Just trying to keep us in a reasonable time zone here with this one. So when I shift, what I feel is when I move the ball, I'm going to slide my right knee up towards that bolster on the right side. And then the knees, I'm going to reach to the back of the legs and then bring my knees towards my ribs and circle, right? So I'm holding the kneecaps would be ideal if you can circulate with your hands on the kneecaps and then feeling that massage through the outer rim of the sacrum, both directions. Okay, now when you move back center, we got one more side. So we're going to move our bolster to the left, however you want to work that arrangement, whether you can kick it over or use your hands to adjust. And then adjust yourself. So left leg straight down, right leg crosses over to the bolster. Use that ball at the sacrum, not required, but if you have one, just use it. And then as you add the sand to that outer right thigh, carry it up and across to the side leg and move the right arm open. This is a nice kind of finale for soothing your hips, your low back, stretching your rib cage, very gently motioning through your breathing muscles. Roll your head to the right. And maybe this side feels different in ways more than the actual range of motion, but just the nervous system around the position can feel different. So noticing how you can offer settling, centering, and letting go. We're going to let this winding down process, even though 70% of the class probably feels like it's a winding down, but we're going to let ourselves stay kind of at this level on our back without having to get up and down one more time. And so I want you to get this as long as you feel like this is helping out into your back musculature, into your hip. Stay with this shape through the end. And if some of you are ready to shift in about 30 seconds or so, you can bring the bolster and shift it back either under your knees, or you can stay in this shape and bring your knees to your chest in about a minute. So I'll give everybody the choice. If you want to stay in this a little longer, stay. And those of you that want to find yourself to one final restorative, then you'll move your sand and your ball. Bring your knees over to the left and then back into center, and then scoot the bolster. So you have to kind of be a little tricky about getting this bolster under the legs, but this is a nice way to kind of shift your thighs so that they're right over the bolster. Under my knees is really where it feels the best. And then I add my sand across my ribs and then fully let the back arch of my waistband center so the sand can help my back waist lengthen. This is one benefit, and put it where it feels like it's doing that, not necessarily where I mention it, the rib connection or the belly, just where does it feel like it softens what's underneath it. Some people may be higher. Now when the arms have their motion of being open, relaxed open, lower the eyes so that any of that stream of circulation and light coming in is darkened. Whether you have an eye pillow or you place your hands over your eyes, removing any hardware off your face. You can also rub your hands so that there's a little deposits of heat into the palms, and placing that over your eyelids, closing comfortably that curtain of darkness. And with that little bit of pressure on your face, you're going to gently slide the hands. So just they swipe out, eyes closed. And then rest the hands either to your sides or a little farther out, opening the chest. And pace the inhale for a count of 4. And the exhale for a count of 5 to 6. Lengthen the exhalation. Weight of the hips heavy. You're turning the body back to a very simple balance for a few more moments. Now bring your arms to the back space overhead, reach both of the limbs to that extensive path of your spine, so it's spine in extension. And then as you move your sand away, hug your legs in and get a nice hug so the back of the pelvis kind of swings to stretch the sides of the spine and the waist. Rock side to side. And then roll to a side to come up to sitting. Take a moment and turn that internal perspective to feeling your legs under and maybe crossing and the hands resting into your lap. And find that collective shared practice together for a moment, because I'm sharing the practice with you. Others are sharing the experience of practice. Lift your hands up in front of the heart or let them stay resting in your lap, and guide that attention to that space of breath. And let's inhale, filling the body, receiving wellness. Exhale, bowing into your heart.